Hi all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. I can't believe I'm making this video right now, but here I am. Actually, I can't believe I make half the videos I make. But anyway, Scott Peterson's back. It appears he's the bad penny that just won't go away. And now, he's asked the LA Innocence Project to take up his case. And they believe they may have new DNA evidence that could actually set Scott free. If you don't know who the heck I'm talking about, Scott Peterson was in a very high-profile case back in 2002 after his very pregnant wife, Laci Peterson, went missing on Christmas Eve. Scott swore he had nothing to do with his wife's disappearance, even though her body and the body of their unborn son, Connor, were found in the San Francisco Bay where Scott told police he had been fishing on the day Laci disappeared. He was convicted of their murders and sentenced to death. But his death sentence was overturned, and he's now serving a life sentence instead. Now, the LA Innocence Project says their attorneys believe, with more advanced DNA testing that wasn't available 20 years ago, they may be able to finally prove Scott's innocence. And they've filed a 1,500-page document stating why they believe his case needs to be reevaluated.
The LA Innocence Project does work to exonerate wrongly convicted and incarcerated people through DNA testing and other scientific advances. KTVU's Jesse Gary has the story.
For nearly 2 decades, Scott Peterson has maintained he did not kill his pregnant wife.
That's correct, Your Honor. I'm innocent.
Thursday, attorneys with the Los Angeles Innocence Project in a San Mateo court filing say Peterson's constitutional rights may have been violated during his initial trial and that his case needs a second look.
Are you surprised that they're taking this move?
There are many people who believe that Scott Peterson is innocent. And for the Innocence Project to step up and say, we're going to do a wholesale review of this case is a huge win for the Peterson defense team.
Scott Peterson was charged in 2003 with the 2002 disappearance and murder of his wife, Laci, and their unborn son, Connor. With evidence mounting against him, Peterson sat down with former KTVU reporter Ted Rowlands, pleading his case to the public.
And now we can really focus on what we need to be doing, which is a missing part of our family. 2 people that should be here with our families.
2 decades ago, Stanislaus County prosecutors said Peterson killed Laci at their Modesto home. He then dumped her body in San Francisco Bay. Her remains were found in 2003 in the waters near Point Richmond, an area where Scott said he had gone fishing. He was convicted in 2004 of 1 count of first-degree murder for her death and 1 count of second-degree murder for the death of their unborn child, Connor. All the while, Peterson maintained someone else was responsible.
It's my objective by doing these media interviews to get people to start looking for her again. And I'm not going to waste the time defending myself. I don't really care what those people out there think. When people accuse me of some involvement, and I had nothing to do with her disappearance, but people still accuse me of it.
In a statement to Fox 2, his current defense lawyer says, "We are very excited that the incredibly talented attorneys at the LA Innocence Project are lending their expertise to help us prove Scott's innocence."
If there's information that wasn't provided to the defense that could have affected Scott Peterson's right to a fair trial, they're going to bring this motion to get him a new trial. This may not change the result of the case, but at the same time, the public also wants to be assured that the jurors got this right.
LA Innocence Project attorneys will pore over every piece of evidence and even use current DNA technology to test some evidence in their search for answers. The process could take months or even years. In Redwood City, Jesse Gary, KTVU Fox 2 News.
Shell report today from the ABC 7 News I-Team. The Los Angeles Innocence Project is seeking a new trial for convicted wife killer Scott Peterson. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Larry Beal.
And I'm Kristen Z. Laci Peterson and her unborn son disappeared just before Christmas 2002. Their bodies found in San Francisco Bay a few months later. Scott Peterson is currently serving a life sentence for the murders.
Dan Noyes has spent the day digging through the records and calling people involved. Joining us now. What have you learned today?
A lot. Well, Larry and Kristen, in this filing, Scott Peterson says he contacted the Los Angeles Innocence Project in July of last year. They took his case and yesterday filed a massive motion with exhibits. The Innocence Project's filings on behalf of Scott Peterson total 1,524 pages, including a motion for post-conviction discovery with a claim of actual innocence that is supported by newly discovered evidence. I asked Scott Peterson's sister-in-law, Janie Peterson, whether she sees this as a real shot at a new trial. Absolutely, she texted, or solving the crime and Scott being released. The Peterson family credits Mike Gudgel, a journalist who used to work for ABC News, with tracking down new evidence.
The verdict was unsatisfactory. It was really conflicted about the case because there's never any explanation of really what happened to Laci. It was really a mystery.
The Innocence Project motion asks for evidence not previously provided to the defense, police interviews with witnesses, photographs, videos, and tips that law enforcement failed to track down. Laci Peterson, then 7.5 months pregnant, disappeared December 24, 2002. The Innocence Project filings focus on a burglary at the home directly across the street from the Petersons' house that same week. They want video of interviews conducted by Modesto police with two men involved in the burglary. One of them reportedly said Laci witnessed him breaking into the house. They want to find out if a van that was found torched near the Modesto airport is connected to the burglary. Inside, investigators discovered a mattress with stains confirmed to be blood. The Innocence Project wants to conduct new DNA tests on those samples. Could it be Laci Peterson's blood? The filing also mentions a witness who says he saw a pregnant woman fitting Laci's description who appeared to be under duress getting into a van on Scenic Road.
I think there's enough evidence that it's probable that someone else may have committed the crime. Enough evidence for law enforcement to investigate further.
They also want more information to help track the trail of a Croton watch that may have been Laci Peterson's, pawned the week after she disappeared. The filings claim Modesto police did not fully follow up on reports that Laci was spotted walking her golden retriever after the time Scott Peterson says he went fishing at 9:30 that morning. Lead Innocence Project attorney Paula Mitchell writes that she has encountered witnesses who feared coming forward because the case is too high profile. Scott Peterson claimed innocence from that day that Laci disappeared, and he repeated that in the filings, writing, "I had absolutely nothing to do with the disappearance and deaths of my wife and son. I am not a violent person. I have never had a physical fight or violent incident with anyone in my life." Larry and Kristen.
All right, this is just unbelievable. But now that this filing is there, what happens next? Does the judge have to compel the turning over of all this evidence, or what?
The judge takes a look and decides whether this is something that the defense or the prosecutors have to respond to. And chances are he or she will say that the prosecutors have to respond to this. And so then there's going to be a hearing where both sides will be able to talk and see whether this should move forward. I mean, the judge could say, there's not enough here to really pursue, but chances are he'll ask for a response from prosecutors, and then it'll move on from there. There's a lot to digest in this.
Well, 1,500 pages, right?
Right, absolutely.
Well, all right, I know you'll stay on top of it.
Will do.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carolyn Johnson.
And I'm Kathy Vara. In 2004, Peterson was convicted in the deaths of his pregnant wife and the couple's unborn child. But now there is a twist with the involvement of the Innocence Project.
Here's what we know. Over the past 2 decades, Peterson and his lawyers have filed multiple appeals, all of which have been denied. Peterson's attorneys did win the battle to get him off death row, but he is still serving a life sentence. He has always maintained his innocence.
NBC4's Christian Cazares has the very latest developments. He joins us live now from our News Operations Center. Christian.
That's right. Well, Pat Harris confirmed via email Scott Peterson is still his client, but declined any interviews. Now, we know the motion was filed yesterday by the LA Innocence Project up in the Bay Area, which seeks post-conviction evidence, hoping to make a change in the case.
Scott Peterson was convicted in the death of his pregnant wife and their unborn son in 2004. The infamous murder case resurfacing after the LA Innocence Project is seeking new evidence from the original trial.
We don't know how strong the Innocence Project's evidence might be. Usually they're involved with DNA stuff. That's probably not the case here.
Legal analyst Royal Oakes, who is not involved in the case, saying this about it.
It's possible to be exonerated, but it's a big hill to climb. It's like going up Mount Everest in Birkenstocks. You have to demonstrate that there's dramatic new evidence that proves he's innocent.
One of the motions filed Wednesday asks the court for an order directing the testing of evidence from the original trial for DNA. Items mentioned in the court document include cloth from a mattress booked into evidence by police that was recovered from an orange van that was set on fire in Modesto in the morning of December 25, 2002. The motion also requests testing of another item found in the van, a shopping bag and its contents, including duct tape found near where Laci Peterson's remains were discovered. Items recovered at a home near the Petersons' residence that had been burglarized around Christmas, and other evidence.
One big mystery is why now? After some 20 years, why should people think that Scott Peterson might have a basis for going free? But presumably the Innocence Project doesn't like to waste their time, so likely they have something that'll be of interest to the judge. The next step is for the Innocence Project to go to the court and say, we think we're working on a very strong exoneration case. Here's evidence of a burglary near the Peterson house. We think somebody else did it, not Scott. And they want to reopen all the files so they can see the full scope of the evidence.
Well, the LA Innocence Project declines an interview and only confirmed they are investigating Peterson's claim of actual innocence. Now, we also tried to reach out to Laci Peterson's family, but we could not reach them for comment. Christian Casares, NBC4 News.
Christian, thank you for that. Tonight, there are still many more questions like, why now?
Colleen Williams joins us, and she has more. Colleen?
For the first time and only here on 4, I posed that question to Mark Garagos, the attorney who represented Scott Peterson. He maintains Peterson was basically guilty in the court of public opinion before a single witness was called or any evidence presented. Here's what else he had to say.
Well, look, the fact that the Innocence Project is taking on the case tells you or speaks volumes. It tells you, number one, that they have vetted it. Number two, they've taken a look at this case in every which way. And the Innocence Project nationally has a track record that is unparalleled. So it's every person who's been falsely convicted's dream is to have the Innocence Project focus their attention on their case. I'll be interested to see now if at this point, some of those jurors, I've been told, even since this announcement this morning, there's already jurors who are saying that maybe this is best. That I'll tell you something. That's almost the definition of reasonable doubt. If 20 some odd years later, you doubt your verdict, that's, to my mind, the definition of reasonable doubt.
Now, we spoke at length this afternoon. Garagos said the case was an uphill battle from day one. Scott Peterson at the time might have been the most hated person in the country. He talked about why and why this is so gratifying after 20 years. We'll hear much more from Mark Garagos coming up on the NBC4 News at 7.
Down. Hello, I'm Chauncey Glover. Here are your top stories. The LA Innocence Project is now taking up the Scott Peterson case. Peterson was convicted of killing his wife and unborn child 20 years ago. The LA Innocence Project has already filed several documents and also in the Superior Court, including a motion for post-conviction discovery. That basically implies Peterson's new legal counsel believes there is potential evidence to challenge his murder convictions.
The Innocence Project has said that they are looking at actual innocence in this case, and they're asking for additional information. They're asking for evidence from the original trial, and the evidence would indicate that they think somebody else potentially perpetrated this crime. They're also asking for additional DNA testing, a type of testing that might not have been available at the time.
And joining us now to talk more about this developing story is political reporter Tom Waite joining us tonight. And Tom, you've been working on this story all afternoon, and you just spoke with the juror from the original trial. Yeah. What did that juror have to say?
It was a fascinating conversation just because, the case has been, over for so long. He basically welcomes this inquiry. He's saying, look, I'm willing to see what they have to say, what they present. He says, I feel comfortable we made the right choice back when the case was presented to us, but I'm open to hearing new evidence. But he seems pretty, solid on his conviction, literally, that what they decided all those years ago is what what the right choice was. He did say it would be absolutely tragic, though, if the evidence that purportedly will be presented was somehow shielded from them or deliberately not given to them. He said, look, if something came up that's new, obviously that happens. But he said that what would bother him obviously is if some evidence was withheld.
Right. Was he surprised about this? And after all of this time, was he kind of shocked and questioning what evidence, and did we get something wrong, or did we miss something, or was something not made available to us?
Right. I think he was surprised, but he did talk about, how the sleepless nights of being on that jury, night after night, going home, or maybe going, I can't remember if they were sequestered, but, going to bed at night and thinking about the case and how hard it was to make a decision because, obviously it's a life-changing decision for the defendant, Scott Peterson, at that time, and obviously for him as well, because the decision they made was so consequential for the rest of, for Scott Peterson, the ultimate sentence was death. Yeah. So, it was overturned, but that was, that's what they were dealing with at the time. So, but yeah, I think he was surprised. I get the sense, but he's very open-minded to, let's see what they have. Let's let it play out. Let's see what's out there.
And now that's what we do. We let it play out. Looking forward to seeing your story coming up tonight. Tom Waite reporting for us tonight.
Thanks, Johnson.
Johnson, one of our legal analysts, is with us. Dean, you've been around this case since the beginning. Is the Innocence Project well respected in the legal community, and are you surprised that they're taking on this case?
Oh, yeah, the Innocence Project is very serious. Following the O.J. Simpson case, Barry Scheck founded the Innocence Project with the idea that they would use technology to maybe exonerate, 3 or 4 people who were sitting on death row. Since that time, they have literally exonerated hundreds of innocent men and women, many of whom were sitting on death row, all of whom were facing very serious homicide-related charges.
Okay, so what's the new evidence here? Both you and I, you a lot more because you have your legal background, have scoured through this. Is it really new, and what stands out to you?
Yeah, it's really new, but it actually corroborates things that we've been hearing ever since the trial. There's been this constant drip, drip, drip of evidence that supports a theory that was only hinted at the trial, namely that Laci Peterson confronted burglars on the day she disappeared, was kidnapped by them, and ultimately murdered by them. There are a number of eyewitnesses who have come forward who said that they saw Laci Peterson hours after Scott Peterson left to go fishing. And they're very credible. But now we have possibly, not yet, but possibly DNA evidence that would connect all of the dots going from the Medina burglary across the street from the Peterson house to the San Francisco Bay shore where Laci Peterson's body was found. It hasn't been tested yet, but the Innocence Project seems to believe quite sincerely that they can connect these dots and create a storyline in which Scott Peterson is innocent.
That is fascinating what you're saying. Getting back to that DNA, was that technology or that evidence available in the court case 20 years ago?
No, and that's the fascinating thing about DNA and the Innocence Project is that DNA has progressed so rapidly and that technology has become so much more powerful that with each development in the biotech area, we've been able to free more and more people who were sitting on death row facing life, without possibility of parole or possibly even the death penalty.
We should add, we have reached out to Laci Peterson's family, have not gotten a response, at least an official response. Dean, final question for you. What's next in this case? Legally now, what happens?
Well, right now, the Innocence Project is in what we call the discovery phase. They are asking for the evidence to be given to them so it can be tested. So as exciting as this sounds, we probably shouldn't get too excited because the tests haven't yet been done. If, however, even 1 or 2 of those pieces of evidence pans out the way the Innocence Project says, this could be either a new trial or possibly game over in which Scott Peterson walks out of the prison a free man.
Amazing that we're even having this discussion 20 years later. Dean Johnson, thanks for your time and thanks for your legal insight this evening.
We all want her back home. She knows how much she's loved, how much she's missed.
Police have said repeatedly over the past weeks that they have not ruled you out as a suspect.
Right.
Have they told you why they haven't ruled you out as a suspect?
My indications are that, you can't rule someone out as a suspect until there's some resolution to the case.
Scott, have you taken a lie detector test?
Again, that's part of the things they've asked me not to talk about.
So you can't comment whether you've taken one. Would you be willing to take a lie detector test?
That's pretty much the same question you just asked, and I can't comment on.
I don't know if you followed Scott's trial like I did, but if you did, or even if you're familiar with his case, I'd be curious to know if you're as shocked as I am about this news. Or maybe you've always wondered if the jurors got it wrong. His sister-in-law has always claimed Scott's innocence, and she's been a staunch supporter of him getting a new trial with new evidence all along. What do you think? I'm all for setting the wrongly convicted free, and I respect the work the Innocence Project does. But I've never, for one single moment, ever, thought Scott was innocent. Not for one single moment. And with all due respect to the Innocence Project, I think Laci's family has been through enough. But if you disagree with me, that's fine. All I ask is that you keep the comments kind and respectful. There's never a need to get nasty just because we may disagree. Besides, hearing all sides makes debate much more interesting, and you'd be amazed to see how much you can learn from an opposing view. Thanks for watching. I'm in shock, so I can't think of much else to say, other than I hope you're all staying safe out there, and I'll see you on my next video.